Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are at for our viewers in our Facebook group. Thank you for joining us today. I think we're going to be talking about a very timely topic about why we get overwhelmed in the holidays or during the holidays. And today I have David Cope with me to help shed some light on a time that can be really challenging for a lot of people. Hi, David. How are you doing today?
Yes, good morning, Karen. I'm doing great. It kind of feels like a half a week. Thanksgiving's coming up, and talking to Peggy this morning, and she said, "Oh, this is going to be nice. We can have a 4 days off this week, so it's a nice short week. So I'm
Yeah.
glad to be here, and it is a very timely topic about why
Mhm.
we get so overwhelmed at the holidays. And I thought this would be a great time to talk to our listeners and viewers to help them have a fresh and new perspective on the holidays, because sometimes we don't slow down enough to
Yeah.
realize what we're heading into. And what we're going to be talking today is very common experience for women, from the perspective of the holidays. So do you want to just jump in and get started?
Sure. Do we want to take a moment and introduce
Yeah,
ourselves for our new
sure.
members?
Yeah.
So, I'm Karen Seitz, and I mentor and teach married women how to take their walls down and how to find their happiness within as a way to solve their marriage problems and finally create the marriage that they always wanted and always wished that they had. And I have been doing the work that I teach women. I've been doing that myself in my own life for almost 4 years and working with many, many other women um, also for the past 4 years. So, all the work that I teach, I'm doing in my own life. And as a result, I have a completely different relationship and a completely different experience of my marriage than I did 4 years ago. And it continues to be rewarding and fulfilling and just keeps growing and keeps getting better. And today I am here with David Cope, the founder of a New Life Center. David, do you want to take a moment and introduce yourself for our new listeners and members in the Facebook
Yeah.
group?
Sure. Thank you, Karen.
Of
It's always
course,
a treat to do these videos
it
because it's
is.
very exciting to share novel perspectives that are different than what we might hear in traditional marriage therapy or marriage counseling. And most of what we teach comes from 10 years of research and study working with women and men on how to build relationships with themselves. So we come from a different perspective that isn't traditional in its nature, but very exciting way to look at intimacy and marriage in a very pragmatic way, which is solution orientated.
Mm.
So my name is David Cope, and I'm a founder of a new life center with my partner Peggy. And I got interested in relationships after I got a divorce. Though even though when I was married, I worked really hard to try to make my marriage work, and it was kind of interesting. After I got divorced, I realized that I could never have made my wife happy, because she
Mm.
always used to tell me, David, I'd be happy if you would only change. And I kept working really hard. I'm a good man and trying to do everything I could. And after the divorce, it just dawned on me very clearly, well, there isn't anything I could have ever done to make her happy, because in order to be for me to make her happy, she had to be happy within herself. And it's kind of the foundation of where this work at a new life center comes from, and from a relationship perspective, is after my divorce, I said to myself I didn't want to be on my deathbed wishing I had a loving and intimate relationship. So I started reading some books and trying to re-educate myself on what I might have done wrong. And everything I was reading and introduced to after my divorce was what I was trying to do to make my marriage work. And I came to the conclusion, in a deep awareness, that in order to have a loving and intimate relationship with another woman, I had to have a loving and intimate relationship with myself. And I started looking at what does that mean and how do I create that relationship with myself. So Peggy and I at a new life center have been teaching men and women how to build a relationship with themselves so that they can bring that relationship and their sense of being at peace and have an inner sense of happiness within themselves and bringing that into the relationship rather than being dependent upon their partners to making them feel a certain way. Because if we're fundamentally unhappy in our relationship, then nothing our partner can uh, do over a long-term period will ever make us happy. We have to focus on finding that happiness in ourselves. And a new life center, we've created a novel and fresh approach to building relationships with ourselves so we can have the intimacy and the love and the long-term relationship we've always desired.
Thank you, David. And in a way, in sharing and introducing yourself, you covered some of our principles and framework for our Facebook group. But I want to highlight those for again for just a. It's always a good reminder.
Yeah.
I need these reminders in my own marriage and in my own relationships, and so I know it's very helpful to our viewers and again to our new members. So our three principles that guide the structure of our Facebook group and also what we teach in building a relationship with yourself and having a healthy relationship are first that you're responsible for your happiness. Like David was sharing, there is no one and no thing that can make you happy, especially if you're unhappy on the inside. That
Mhm.
happiness is an inside job. And we've got to dig into ourselves and do that work to find that happiness within. And then we can bring it into our relationships. And the second principle is that you're the only person you can change. And I think we all know that on some level, but it's very easy to push away, especially in our marriage when we think our husband is the problem and he's the one that needs to change. We lose sight of a very fundamental principle in life that the only person we have any control over to change is ourselves. And when we accept that and we embrace that, it makes things so much easier and so much simpler in life because we can always empower ourselves to be our own solutions to the
Mm.
problems we're coming up against, whether that's in our marriage or in other areas in our life. And the third principle is that authentic intimacy really begins with having a relationship with ourselves and feeling good about who we are from the inside. It's from
Mhm.
that place that we can have the vulnerability to really show up as who we are in our marriages and with our husbands and share ourselves fully without having walls up, without being guarded, and without the expectations that our husbands are supposed to make us feel good. So when we can drop that, that's where we build a relationship with ourselves, start to feel good, and then we can connect and finally have that loving, intimate relationship that we wanted with our husbands.
Wow. That was nice and clean and clear. Thanks,
Thanks,
Karen.
David. It's becoming more solidified in me and my own marriage.
Yeah, but it's so lovely that it's coming from your heart and from your own experience. And thank you for sharing such a heartfelt perspective.
Of course.
So, the topic we're talking about today is why we get overwhelmed during the holidays. And I think what we're trying to do for our listeners is to have them stop and pause for a moment and realize that, okay, I am going into the holidays. And it's very common for women to be stressed out and overwhelmed during the holidays. And we're going to talk a little about why that happens. The first place I'd like to start, Karen, is something that I am. See, I have four children. The great part of even though I got divorced from my marriage, I have four wonderful children that I am so proud of and love being a dad. And fortunately for my ex-wife was able to do a lot of the same work that we're teaching the women to find her own happiness in herself. And my ex-wife and Peggy and I share a friendly relationship, and we're very cordial, and it makes a lovely opportunity to show my children that there is a we can be adults and learn and grow and change and come together even after hardships from a divorce. One of the things I teach my children about the holidays, and I want to frame it from this perspective, is that the challenge in the holiday season is that as a culture, we believe that the holidays are something that we feel obligated to do. The holidays every year, we feel that it's something we should be doing, and it's expected of us to be in a relationship with our family is what we do during the holiday season. And though everybody might not agree or understand this, what I've been teaching my children over the years about the holiday is that it's that the family unit and all of the family getting together is an illusion. That
Mm,
somehow we bought into the illusion that our family members are all supposed to get along, and when we get together, we're supposed to like each other and enjoy being together. And what I've learned over the many years of working with women and men and families and issues, that most families are dysfunctional,
yeah.
and the illusion is that we're all happy and we want to get together. Though there are some families, but it's very unusual for families to really get along the way our mind wants us to believe and our culture suggests. And that we what we do is we bring into our family all the years of emotional all the years of emotion that we shared with each other growing up, and the pain that we carried all these years without resolution, and we bring that into the family settings without having any awareness that the dynamics of the relationships are going to be interplayed into when we get together. It's kind of the same thing that I've shared with my sons as they've gotten older and married with children, is at some point they had to overcome the illusion of being married. The illusion in our culture of being married says when you get married and have kids, you live happy ever after, and everybody works together as a unit, and there's a sense of cohesiveness and sharing of love and intimacy in a marriage. What happens to most of us in our marriage relationship, the truth of marriage is it's at its best, it's difficult. And we have to work very hard in our relationship to manage our own emotional state and to be true to ourselves, to come together to make a marriage work. And it isn't until you actually get into being married that you find out what you thought marriage was is actually something totally different. And most people are ill prepared to do marriage, which is why we're doing this intimacy course, which is basically how to how to do marriage. Nobody ever taught us how to do it. So at some point, we all come to this awareness that what we thought marriage was and the reality of what it is two different things. And I call that the illusion of marriage, much like the illusion of family, that somehow we want to believe that I'm supposed to get along with my sister, or I'm supposed to get along with my in-laws, and that we're all supposed to be able to get together and want to be together and share this common experience. But as a culture, what was has happened to us is there's an obligation that we feel that we unconsciously place on our family members, that we have to get together and we're supposed to get along. So maybe since I'm doing so much talking, Karen,
Yeah,
that
no, you're
we can
great.
talk about the expectations that we
Yeah.
have going into the holidays, and how these are the sense of obligation and doing holidays as a should. So, what are some of the expectations we unconsciously put upon ourselves when we go into the holiday season?
Oh, so many. So many. I love what you were talking about. And as far as families, we think we're supposed to be close and be best friends and have it all together. So that ties a lot into the list we have here. Um, and these are expectations that I've seen in myself. Many of the women that I've worked with, um, this time of year, we're always working around things around the holidays. So all of this is really normal.
Yes,
And
thank you.
the purpose is, like David was saying, to be able to slow down and be
Mm.
conscious of these things that are coming up in you so that you can look at them and hopefully move through the holidays with a lot more ease and not as much overwhelm and stress. We just don't take the time to slow
Yeah,
down and be proactive to
yeah.
see these things.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, and it's a huge shift when we can do this. It doesn't mean that it makes it easy, but it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
Um, so our expectations that we have during the holidays, is that we're all supposed to be happy. That when everyone gets together, everyone's supposed to be happy and joyful and the most wonderful time of the year, and that everyone needs to be in that place. Um, uh, Another one is that everyone has to have a good time. Everyone's got to have fun. Everybody's got to participate in all the games and all the festivities, and everybody's got to have a good time. That everybody gets along and likes everyone. And David, it's so interesting looking at that now because that's historically been a huge expectation in my own family. And it's really interesting to see how if we've had issues and challenges getting along and liking each other in the past, why is that magically going to change during the holidays?
Mm.
So it's really interesting the expectations we come up with. Another is that more is better, more time, more food, more people, the more the merrier. So just get all the excess, let's get all the things. Recreating childhood memories and experiences, and that
Mm.
they should feel and be exactly like they were 20, 30 years ago. To be everybody's favorite. So this one specifically for me and a lot of the women I work with, this comes up a lot around in-laws, to show up and to be everyone's favorite, to be your mother-in-law's favorite, to do everything perfectly. Another that ties into that is to be on my game,
Mm.
um, to to have it all together, to have the right outfit, to have the right attitude, the right smile, say the right things, to be on.
Mm.
And what's interesting is what I notice again in myself and in other women is we put this expectation on our husband too, that they
Mm.
need to be on their A game, um, that they need to talk to everyone and don't drink too much and be helpful and be in a good mood. Make sure you're in a good mood.
Yeah.
And we put that on our husbands too. And then another one I put on here was that our kids should be on their best
Yeah.
behavior and they should show up as their best too. And don't let anyone see the
Yeah.
real problems or the real issues that we actually have. Like,
Yeah.
let's show up as the perfect
Yeah. The perfect.
family.
Yeah. Thank you,
So,
Karen.
of
Yeah.
course.
So it's interesting. One of my clients is a psychiatrist in
Mm,
Denver, and we were having our a meeting, and we found out that he was very stressed.
mm,
He didn't know why, and after slowing down and doing some work, he realized and was aware that his wife's family, all of the family, were coming in town for the week of
mm.
Thanksgiving, and he hadn't slowed down enough to stop and realize how he felt. He was just suppressing his feelings as the husband of his wife's family coming into time and spending a week at their house and all their family members. The good part of this is that he happens to like his wife's family and enjoys it. But what was brought up for him was what his parents made him do when he was little was every time they went to the holidays to family, they would tell him, you're going to go, you're going to like it, and you're going to behave. And I don't want to hear anything else out of you. And he's a grown man as a psychiatrist, and he's grown up to feeling that way during the holidays.
Yeah.
And we were able to see that as a grown man, he still feels like he's has to go to the holidays and he has to make himself like it and like he was a kid and he was going into this week with his wife's family coming to town feeling like he was trapped, that he was being made and forced to have the holidays and be on top of the game and get along with all the family members for a whole week. And he said he felt like there was no him in this experience, that he didn't even exist, that like his sense of self was totally gone for the week, and he just had to commit to being involved in the family, even though he didn't even want to be there. It was something that was forced on him. He also said at a very deep level, because he felt pressured to doing all this, there was a deep sense of rage within him. And
Wow.
he was very surprised that all of this came up in preparation. So as we continue into this um, topic, we're going to talk about how to resolve some of these, and I'll share some of the things we talked with him about, which made all the difference in a few minutes. But I also want to remind the women in the group that, as you know, men and women are different, and women look at holidays generally different than men do, and men generally look at holidays, I'd like it, keep it simple. I don't really need a lot of people. We just not make a big deal and let's keep it simple. And often it's the women, that is why we're talking, that have this sense of need to make the holidays something special and over the top, and that somehow they're responsible being on top of it, making the holidays this perfect experience, that they have these expectations it's supposed to be. And in reality, is over time, what I teach my children and others is that the more we simplify the holidays, the more conscious we are about how we're feeling and each your partners are feeling, the easier it is to get through it rather than rushing through. I know one of my women clients says that once Thanksgiving come, she races through November and December, and she's
Mm.
office unconscious and just pushes herself through. And she secretly has this conversation. Oh, I wish it was summer, but when there's no holidays and no family, and I don't have this huge obligation that I have to look forward to.
Yeah.
So Karen, we also talked about some of this obligations and should, and why we feel this obligation is because there's these unspoken rules that we have in our culture, in our family environment. What is it that we tell ourselves will happen if I don't go to a family event that I'm invited to, or if the family's traveling to one family member and you don't go and everybody's going, the family feels left out, or if you're in town and you don't want to spend the whole day together. What are some of the things we talked about is how we feel if we don't go to a family event, which is this obligation that we have.
Yeah. And we make it such a big obligation and create so much overwhelm and stress within ourselves of what's going to happen if we don't go. And so some of the things that we tell ourselves and run up against of what will happen if we don't go is I'll be selfish. I'll be seen as selfish. I'll feel selfish. They'll all see me as selfish. That I'll be a bad daughter or a bad daughter-in-law if I don't go. My family will reject me and won't understand that if I don't go and I'm on my own, I'll be a loner. I'll feel like there's something wrong with me. Um, or that I would,
Yeah, it's interesting. What we've learned is the holidays are a very sensitive time when if you're not with family, or for some reason you don't have family, we feel like we're all alone and we miss the family. But when you're actually on the other side and you have family, you actually can feel alone and um, by yourself in the holiday season as well. But it's interesting that is this feeling of being a loner. If you don't participate, that everybody think that there's something wrong with you. Why don't you want to be with family? Like, are you a Scrooge or something?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So what else was on that list? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, thank you. It's such a good point. That I'd be cutting ties with my family, that that would be the end of our relationships, or they'll never see me the same again. And a big one for me even when I'm like excited, if my husband and I are just going to do a Thanksgiving with ourselves and keep it simple, a lot of times there's still this underlying feeling of somehow I'm going to miss out on something.
Mhm.
So if
Oh,
we don't go, we feel like we're going to miss out. We're going to miss something, and these are the things we get stuck in if we're not going to go.
thank you, Karen.
Of course,
So, did did we have another list that we talked about sharing? Because I want to make sure we're getting into the solution,
of
but
course.
it mostly it's making having our listeners slow down
Mhm.
and make some conscious choices. We'll be talking about. But what other lists
Yeah.
did we have that we wanted to make sure we talked about?
The other one, these all tie in together to see how they all play in, but the other one is how we feel during
Oh,
the holidays. So I think it's important to talk about what's really going on that all of this is coming up
yeah.
and why we feel these things. So do you want to
Yeah, so what you're
introduce this
saying
a
is
little?
we have the women that are listening to slow down and recognize that they're very much likely feeling these same feelings
Yeah.
about the holidays, and also to know that this is normal.
Yeah.
That's why we're talking about it. For some reason, it's kind of like going to a wedding and everybody is so excited for the couple getting married. But meanwhile, everybody that's in the audience, most people are not happy in their marriages or and they're struggling. But somehow we all want to believe the this excitement of the new couple getting married that somehow they're going to be the ones that have true love, and we all get together in this setting to be excited for them, but we all know in our hearts that we're not happy married and that marriage is really a struggle. And bless them for getting started. Family is and getting together is the same kind of thing. Nobody wants to talk about how we feel obligated to get together and forced on the holidays to spend time together, and nobody talks about it. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to share that if you're feeling that deep down, it's okay and it's normal, and there are solutions that help to modify and to make the holiday season much more bearable.
Yeah. So some of the ways that we feel, I think that we can all relate to if we're willing to do what David is suggesting, which is to slow down and just be aware of these things, not make them wrong or bad, but understand this is really normal and this is what most people come up against during the holidays and the things that get shaken up in them. So,
Uh, Talking about shaking up, that's a cue.
yeah.
What do you have that you want to show about the shaking up? I
Yeah,
always
so
like it when you do that, so
and
I don't want to miss that.
it's very fitting in what we're
Yeah.
talking about because I have a snow globe here. And this is a analogy or a way that I teach about how when we stuff our feelings
Mhm.
and we don't want to feel, when life comes along, whether it's the holidays or a challenge in our marriage or a challenge at work or with our kids, all of those feelings that we've been stuffing and not wanting to face within ourselves, we shove down. So I like to imagine us all as snow globes, and that all of the bits and pieces of snow and coincidentally glitter at the bottom of the snow globe represent all of our negative feelings and insecurities and doubts and fears that we stuff that we don't want to feel. So when things come along like the holidays, all of that gets shaken up in us and we don't know what to do with it and we confuse it thinking it's about the holidays or thinking it's about what our husband's doing or not doing when really that's been in us all along, and whatever's happening externally like the holidays is just shaking that up in us. And while it's uncomfortable and we don't know what to do with it, when we can learn what to do with it, it becomes an opportunity to let go of those old feelings and let go of those old insecurities and doubts so we can let them go, which builds a relationship with
Mhm.
ourselves and helps us to feel good about ourselves. So the holidays come along and they shake all of these
Mm,
unresolved hurts and pains and
mhm,
unresolved losses up in us, and we don't know what to do with it. So we get really overwhelmed and we make it all about the holidays. So, how we typically feel that I think we can all relate to is we
mm,
feel stressed out. We feel unloved and empty. We feel lonely. We can feel not enough. We start to feel out of control and pressured. Another one that a client shared with me is she has a holiday me. So she feels all this pressure to be the holiday her when really inside she's feeling all of these things. Nothing is ever quite enough. We feel a lot of anxiety or we can even feel depressed. We have this pressure on us. We feel it's up to us to make it perfect. And we feel like we're responsible for everyone else's experience. And what we talked about, David, before coming on today is the kicker of it all is as women, when we've got this going on inside of ourselves and we're with a good man, he gets the backlash of what we're feeling because we
mm,
project onto him why we're feeling the way that we're feeling. And that's just an example of us having our walls up and pushing them away. And the kicker of it for me that I got a healthy dose of last year is because I was so wrapped up in myself and so wrapped up in what I was feeling in me. I was completely unaware that my husband is also a human being and
mhm,
has challenges and issues and feelings that come up for him around the holidays. And because I was so wrapped up in myself, I had no empathy for him, no understanding that he was coming up against his own feelings and his own challenges. So he retreated from me because I put my walls up and pushed him away and had no understanding of what might be going on for him.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what happens when we are so overwhelmed and focused. We think that the external, the holidays, and our husband and our life is creating it, not realizing that we're creating our own overwhelm. And that's what we're going to kind of talk about next: is what can you do to manage the holiday season so you don't get overwhelmed and you can manage it in a more healthy way and maintain some intimacy with
Yeah.
your husband during the holiday season instead of worrying about that he's drinking too much or he's not present or I can't count on him or all the things that seem to happen so commonly in the holiday season because we tend to get so stressed out and racing through them without having any awareness. So the first thing that we need to learn to do is really to be conscious
Mm,
that we are creating this environment and that we recognize that the holiday season is a stressful and difficult and challenging emotional time for us and that it's normal.
mm,
That we don't realize it, but most everybody is going through the same thing. And the goal ultimately over time is to simplify the holiday season. I have a woman client that was struggling with it and she didn't know why she was getting so irritable and picking on her husband, nitpicking on her husband. And we in our session we slowed down enough for her to realize that she was getting stressed about the holidays and her obligations and what was ahead of her with Christmas parties and having the grandchildren over the house, that she wasn't aware that she was heading into the holiday season. So she was taking it out on her husband and she thought her it was something her husband was doing. And she began to slow down and realize, no, when I'm stressed, I take it out on my husband. And bless him, he knows how to handle me when the holiday season comes. But certainly, she said, I don't want to be that woman anymore. I
mm.
don't want to race through the holiday season in a way that I'm frantic and without any awareness of what I'm doing and what's happening. The first thing is to recognize this is the holiday season. You're going to be stressed. The second part of it is to realize that you have a choice in what you're doing and the things that you're choosing to do. So without the awareness that we're going to holiday season, what happens is we don't realize that, well, we have a choice about Thanksgiving and whether we're going or not going. And if we feel that it's an obligation that family is coming to town or we have to go to somebody's house and that we it's really a choice. And one of the videos we've talked about shoulds, and one of the great ways to manage ourselves is to realize that often we do things as a should, meaning it's an obligation. I'm supposed to do it. When we do things from a place of a should or obligation, we feel resentful and we go to something pretending we're happy and we're enjoying ourselves, but deep inside we have this deep resentment that somehow we're being made to do something we really don't want to do. And the holiday season is filled with shoulds. So slowly, if you can begin to make choices. So, for example, the psychiatrist that I work with and mentioned earlier, the big part with him was just realizing that it the family is coming. He does enjoy them, but he had a choice that he could have said to his wife, "I'm sorry, I don't want your family coming for a whole week. Can we just have them come and have that discussion?" But he agreed that they should come. So that way he can make a conscious choice that he made the choice rather than it being a should and building resentment that somehow he was forced to do it. By making the conscious choice that you're choosing to be there, it takes a lot of the resentment and the feeling like you're forced to do something, and then you can actually enjoy it in a much more comfortable manner.
Mm.
We also had him see that he can find himself within that week of the being in the holiday by making different choices, that maybe he goes to the gym a couple of times, or maybe he says he loves to play games. So if he feels like he's being overwhelmed, he can slow the process down by saying, "Oh, let's play some games," and he enjoys doing that. That he can start making choices each day, what he wants to do and what he doesn't want to do, so he doesn't feel like he's being forced into it.
Mm.
So it's a very big. It's going back into understanding shoulds. Is if I feel that I am forced to do it, I will resent it. But if I take the time and make a choice that I'm making the choice to do it, that nobody's making me do it, it changes the whole perspective in how you're feeling about going into it. So again, another part with this other woman, she races through the holidays, and they have all these holiday parties. And I said, let's slow down and pick the ones you actually want to go to, and tell the people ahead of time that you have other obligations. So you're choosing your experience throughout the holidays, so you're not racing through feeling like you have to be the superwoman and be everywhere and be everything all the time. So choice is really important. And then the longer term vision of the holidays is to 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 slow it down and not to do so much and make things simpler. I know, as we talked a little bit earlier, most men love the simplicity of the holidays and don't feel the need to make it just an extravagant event. And so your husband will probably be supportive of keeping it simple and making more choices to simplify it over time, and being more aware of your emotional state and and be in control of that rather than feeling like it's happening to you and you have no control, that it's kind of this locomotive racing through the holidays and you're feeling out of control. Anything you want to add to that, Karen?
Well, yeah, just something hit me when you were talking about that last piece, David, and how men really want to make it simple, and oftentimes as women, and I've never had a woman argue with me on this, we like to make things really complicated, let's be honest. And what I'm seeing and what you're saying, David, is making it extravagant, making it over the top, doing all the things, getting all the things in cannot make you happy.
Mm-hmm.
that
So
that a lot of times we want to go over the top and make it extravagant and get all the things in because we think it's somehow going to make us happy. And this really ties back into our central message that
Mhm.
no thing and no one can make you happy. And I know for myself, when I make it extravagant, when I make it over the top, guess what? The very first thing is out of my mouth. I wish I had just kept it simple. I wish I hadn't committed to all of this because when we're unhappy internally on the inside, we
Mhm.
want what we don't have. So whatever we think is going to make us happy then becomes the thing that's making us unhappy.
Mhm.
So if you can maybe remember that and see what it's like to slow down, to see what it's like to just pick a few things that you want to do and to do that for yourself,
Mhm.
I think you'll see a dramatic shift in how you can experience yourself this holiday season.
And thank you, Karen. And for me, it's been a process that I have
Yeah.
to limit and change every year. It isn't something that is generally acceptable with our family and ourselves that we do something abruptly, but every year if you choose to make it simpler and simpler and make different choices, not only will your family begin to understand and accept your choices, but also it allows things to slow down. I know my one of the things that we've done over the holiday season is we stopped giving gifts. And a lot of people think, oh, that's what the holiday is all about, but it's simplified. We realize that we have a lot of things, material things, and there really isn't anything that anybody really needs. And it's nice to think you can give people gifts, but there's so much pressure around the holidays of getting the right gifts and making sure you're bringing gifts. And boy, as a husband and a partner, one of the things I hated the holidays because I had to get the perfect gift for my wife, and if I didn't get the perfect gift, it was I didn't understand her, and inevitably I didn't get the right gift, and it was so much pressure with the presents. So in my family over the years, we've slowly stopped giving presents, and the ones that get the presents are the grandchildren. And I know my ex-wife has struggled with this over the years, and my kids are used to it because the philosophy is that my kids we have what we need, and we don't really need more things, and and that we can appreciate the holidays for what the holidays represent, rather than making it about giving gifts. And my ex-wife always brought lots of gifts when she came to visit over the holidays, and for the first time this year she's moving during this time, and her finances are a little tighter, and she told the kids in the family and the grandkids that there won't be any presents this year, that she's coming to visit them for Christmas, and she's the present.
Yeah.
And it simplifies the holidays so much when we can be ourselves and share ourselves more on a one-on-one basis, to getting to know and sharing our time together, and letting the presence be a secondary or tertiary part of the process, because then we can begin to enjoy the holidays for what they are, rather than the stress and pressure of what we make it out to be. And
Yeah.
presence is a really big thing. And ladies, I know it's a very common thing for us men to we don't look forward to the responsibility of finding that perfect present that we think our wives want, and it really takes a lot out of the fun of the holidays. So,
Yeah.
can you kind of wrap up on what we're talking about today, Karen, and
I can.
for our
So
listeners?
in wrapping up today, we're just talking about why we get overwhelmed during the holidays, which very simply put is there's so much expectation and we do so many things out of obligation or out of a place from it being a should, doing what we think we're supposed to do or being who we think we're supposed to be.
Mhm.
And that's really normal. One of the things we really wanted to emphasize today is that it's normal to feel challenged, to feel overwhelmed, to have all sorts of feelings come up around the
Mhm.
holidays. So instead of trying to pretend like that's not there and pushing it away and trying to override that somehow, that the solution really is to slow down and be conscious of what's getting stirred up in you, and normalize that for yourself to recognize that's really common and it happens for most people during the holidays. And the solution is slowing down, and as David was saying, realizing that you have choices around the holidays to pick the things you want to do, to be proactive. If you're spending it with family, what do I want to do today? What don't I want to do? So that you feel more in charge of
Mhm.
your own experience, which will
Beautiful.
drastically cut down the overwhelm and stress. And you can be kind to yourself, and then hopefully also kind to others around you, especially your husband, and not put your walls up, and recognize he has things coming up for him too. Um, and let's see, and to again, just stressing again to simplify that, to make it more about showing up as yourself, and not make it about all the things and all the food and all the presents, but to make it about what it really is, and sharing yourself with others and sharing time together,
Mhm.
with your family. And the last piece I really want to drive home that David said is that this is a process,
Mhm.
that learning to show up in a healthy, constructive way during the holidays is not supposed to happen overnight. That it's a process, and to be patient with yourself, and hopefully just being aware of some of the things that come up and knowing that that's normal can really help you. And if you're listening today thinking, oh my gosh, that sounds great, but I haven't the first clue on where to start on how to make a choice, or how
Mhm.
to even slow down in myself, or how to simplify that. Maybe you feel really lost in your patterns and really lost in the overwhelming feelings that come up around the holidays. And you notice how that bleeds into your marriage and affects how you and your husband um, connect or don't connect during the holidays. If that's what's going on for you, then that that's normal too, and that makes a lot of sense. I could hear these things before, but didn't know where to start to make a choice. I needed someone to teach me.
Mhm.
And so if you're sitting there feeling just overwhelmed even by what we've shared, then know you can private message me, and let's just talk. Let's book a phone call, to help you get clear on some of the
Mhm.
issues and challenges that are coming up for you around the holidays, and especially as they tie into your marriage. And if we can help you to solve those problems, then we'll talk about how. And if not, that's okay too. I promise you will gain clarity by having a phone call with me in ways that you've never experienced before. And I would love to help you in any way that I can. So please feel free to private message me, and we'll get something set up.
Thank you, Karen. That
Of
was lovely.
course.
Thank you for sharing this, and thank you to our listeners. Sometimes this is a difficult topic to talk about,
Yeah.
but it's a good way for us to reconnect with ourselves, to know our truth and what feels right for us, and take the time to investigate that, and over time to make changes so we're more congruent with the truth of who we are and embracing ourselves. So thank
Yeah.
you all for listening.
Yeah.
Happy holidays, happy Thanksgiving, and we appreciate your listening and taking your time out of your day.
Thank you so much.
Bye
Bye.
bye.